Aloha, and mahalo for supporting the state of Hawaii and its people. Please take this time to go over these very important briefings as part of our JRSOI in processing.
Aloha, my name is Chaplain Lau. As you prepare for your mission, I want to remind you of the support available to you through your chaplains and religious support teams. First, chaplains provide confidential spiritual counseling. Think of them as a pressure relief valve when the mission gets heavy. Second, religious support teams safeguard your right to practice your faith, whatever it might be. They also help ensure that the command's religious support program meets all of your needs. Third, chaplains are advocates for you and your families. Whether you're facing personal struggles, family stress, financial issues, or even substance concerns, they can provide direct support or connect you with other trusted references. Chaplains are available before, during, and after your mobilization. If you'd like to speak with one, notify your NCOIC, OIC, or you can contact the chaplain's office directly. As you step into this mission, I pray God grants you and your loved ones strength, protection, and peace. God bless you, and thank you for your service to the Hawaii National Guard.
Aloha, this is Lieutenant Colonel Lloyd Phelps. I am the State Judge Advocate for the Hawaii National Guard, and I am here to give you all your briefings on legal considerations when you're called up to service. The briefing is going to consist of a quick rundown of the rules for the use of force, which is similar to the ROE, a briefing you guys get whenever you're deploying over to Iraq, Afghanistan, or whatever. And then a quick 2 or 3 things, miscellaneous things that come up invariably whenever you deploy or you're called up. So with that, we're going to roll into the rules for the use of force. Like all things much like the ROE, rules for the use of force are the rules that you need to abide by if something comes up and you're being confronted by somebody, something happens and you have to take some sort of action against an individual. Much like the ROE, the rules for the use of force, you're allowed to use the minimum force necessary to counteract whatever it is that you're dealing with. I always like to say, hey, you know what? If somebody comes up to you and they push you, that doesn't mean you get to whip out an M16 and blow them away. Whatever force you use against an individual who is presenting an issue to you, it has to be the minimum amount of force necessary to counter whatever the threat is that you're facing. One thing that I always tell soldiers, sometimes they get deployed, whatever, and they get so wound up in what the rules are that they lose sight of the fact that you always have the inherent right of self-defense. You have to take the minimum force necessary in order to protect yourself, yes, but you always have the right of self-defense. You don't have to sit there and go through the rules and try to figure out what you're supposed to be doing while somebody's beating the hell out of you. Basically, you always have that right to defend yourself, but whatever it is you do to defend yourself, it has to be the minimum force necessary to counteract whatever it is you're facing. So if you're being assaulted, you may use all means necessary to counter that assault, and it has to be the level of force that you believe is reasonably necessary based upon the circumstances that you're facing. And always keep in mind that anything beyond that minimum amount of force to counter the threat to you is considered excessive force, and that can necessarily get you into trouble. I always put it this way. Let's just say somebody comes up to you, you're at a traffic control point, and somebody's getting they're aggravated over something. It's happened, whether it was over on the Big Island during lava flow operations, over on Maui during the wildfire response. Some people weren't necessarily happy with our presence there or what it was we were telling them to do, and they ended up assaulting at least a couple of our National Guardsmen. I always say you have the inherent right of self-defense. You can counter that assault by physically protecting yourself, but let's say you get to the point where you've actually subdued that person. You're not allowed to sit there and continue to beat on the person after he's been taken out of the fight. That would be considered excessive force, and that could necessarily get you into some trouble. So we'll go through what we call the force steps. This is called the force continuum. I'm just going to go ahead and build all these out here, but again, you use the least amount of force necessary to counter the threat. Now, normally for us, when we're deployed, our presence is enough to counter whatever threat our presence is enough to usually keep people in line. They see us at traffic control points. Most people want to follow the law. Most people are willing to, listen to what you're saying and what you're directing them to do. So a lot of times our presence is enough to prevent people from doing things they shouldn't be doing. However, sometimes that's not enough. Somebody comes up to your control point, or they're going into an area they should be going into. Well, maybe the next step is, or the preferable next step is, to give them a verbal command. Hey, halt, you don't come forward to my traffic control point until I'm ready to wave you forward, or if they're in some area they're not supposed to be, you give them a verbal command to, hey, vacate out of that area. Most of the time they're going to listen to you, but when they don't, the next step in that force continuum would be an empty hand technique. Let's say if somebody's coming up at a checkpoint and you've told them to stop and they continue coming towards you and they're acting in an aggressive sort of manner, well, the next logical step would be an empty hand, what we call a soft technique. Maybe you shove them away and say, hey, I've told you you're not allowed in this area, or I've told you to stay there and come forward when I command you or tell you to come forward. That would be your next step, a soft open hand shoving technique. That doesn't work. Let's say the person starts getting physical with you. You're perfectly allowed to go what we call hard techniques: a strike, a punch, a kick, whatever it is necessary to counter whatever it is that person is doing to you. From there, if you've been issued a less than lethal weapon, this would be like your stun gun, your baton sticks, things like that. You can use those. So long as you're checked out on it and it's been issued to you by your command, you're allowed to use a less than lethal weapon if it's been legally issued to you. And then finally, your last resort would be deadly force. And we're going to get into that a little more, exactly what deadly force is. But keep in mind, this is the preferential steps you would take in a situation where it went from somebody acting slightly aggressive, whatever, and it just goes all the way up to the point where, hey, this person's demonstrating serious hostile act or hostile intent where I think my life is in danger. That would be your preferred force steps that you would go through. But the one thing I always say about these things is you don't have to necessarily take each step before you go to deadly force. If you gave a verbal command to somebody 20 feet away from you saying, hey, halt, don't come any farther, and then all of a sudden that person says F you and pulls out a pistol and is going to get ready to shoot you, you don't have to go through all these other techniques, obviously, to counter that. At that point in time, you would be able to go straight to deadly force. But this would be the preferred technique if the situation allowed. Okay, the next slide. This basically goes over what deadly force is and what you have to do. Basically, what this slide is saying is that you have to exhaust all other means that are reasonably available to you prior to, let's say, you're armed. You have an M16 at the low ready, or you have a 9mm. If you can, you're supposed to be able to exhaust all other means available to you prior to going straight to deadly force. But again, like I said in the prior slide, there may be situations where all these other means that are out there are unavailable to you simply because the situation has escalated so fast that, hey, I have to resort to deadly force. So again, try to use all other means, but again, always keep in mind that if the situation gets deadly enough, you're allowed to use deadly force. The other thing to keep in mind when it comes to stuff like that is that you need to minimize the risk to people around. I always say, hey, if we got somebody in a crowd and he pulls out a knife and is threatening you, that doesn't necessarily allow you to take your M16 and just spray the crowd down. So always keep that in mind, the risk to any bystanders that may be near if you do resort to deadly force. Again, deadly force can be used to avoid death or serious bodily injury to you, your fellow guardsmen, civilians if you happen to be out there. The force doesn't necessarily have to be directed at you. If you observe a fellow soldier at a checkpoint being assaulted, and at some point in time during that assault, the assaulter whips out a knife and is about ready to stab your fellow soldier, you may use deadly force to actually protect your fellow soldier. You may use deadly force to actually protect civilians that you see are being, assaulted or threatened with serious bodily harm. The final caveat to that is you can use deadly force in the prevention of an escape if that person, let's say you've taken somebody into your custody and you're speeding them over to the police where they're going to process them. If that person tries to use deadly force to escape from you, i.e. takes out a knife, a gun, or whatever, you may use deadly force to counter that. But you can't, the escape itself is not grounds for using deadly force. So what that means is, let's say you got a guy, protester, like when we were up during the TNT protest, a lot of times they would take people into custody, but you would turn them over to the police. Well, what happens if you grab the guy and say, hey, we're we're arresting you, we're going to give you over to the police, and he just shoves you away and runs off. Well, that does not give you the right to use deadly force. That person hasn't threatened you with any sort of deadly force. They're simply trying to escape, and you're not allowed to use deadly force to counter that. And the other thing we always say is that warning shots are considered deadly force. Anytime you fire your weapon, whether it was up in the air or whatever, that's considered deadly force. And what we always say is, and this goes back decades as far as National Guard operations go, warning shots aren't authorized. If you're going to fire your weapon, you're firing it at something or somebody. You're not firing it up in the air to warn things. And the reason for that is multiple, but just know that we don't fire warning shots. If you do have to use any sort of force on somebody, whether it's physical force, deadly force, whatever, you're going to be expected to fill out a form that documents the use of that force. And the reason for that are multiple, but it's to basically document what it is you did, and it goes up the chain of command, and we have that in our files. That way we know what happened, and it can be kind of a CYA. If somebody comes back later and says, oh, this guy did this, that, the other thing to me, and I want to sue the guard and sue whatever, at least we've got it documented what exactly happened, what caused the need for the force, and the condition of the person when you eventually handed them over to the police or whoever it is. Get on to the next slide. That is the actual reporting form that you would use. Presumably, if you guys were out doing traffic checkpoints, presence patrols, whatever, you would be issued that card. And if the situation came up where you needed to use force against somebody, you would fill that out and then submit it to your unit, and we would keep that on our files during the duration of the operations. When you guys do get out into the field, you will be subject to what they call arming orders, and those come from your commander. And basically, this is just it's a list of, I think it's 5 different layers of potential arming situations which you would be in, whether it's no weapon at all, weapon issued but not loaded, weapon issued, locked, loaded, that sort of thing. And we'll show you that on the next slide. More than likely, 90% of the operations we do here in Hawaii are disaster relief, disaster response, and you're not going to be issued a weapon. But if you are, just know what your arming orders are, and this will come down from from command, from your unit commander. You guys will know what it is you have and how you're supposed to employ it. But with that slide, there you go. There's your 5 different arming orders. More than likely, if you're most of these operations, you're AO number 1, which is do you have no weapon or anything like that, and then it goes on up through AO 5, which is you would have a weapon in hand and locked and loaded. Probably not going to happen on the mission you're on, but if it is, those are your levels of arming. Less than lethal weapons, I had touched on those before. That would be your stun guns, batons, riot control agents, stuff like that. The only thing we always say about that is that if you can't use those unless you're certified to use them. We have certain units out there that are trained on those things and they get to use them. If you're issued it by your command and you're certified to use it, we can potentially use them. But remember, the one thing about less than lethal weapons is that even though they're considered less than lethal, they can have actually lethal effects on people. There are people that have been hit with stun guns and things like that have fallen over and cracked their heads and died or been seriously, permanently maimed. So they can have serious consequences despite their name less than lethal. But again, you have to be certified on them. They have to be issued by your command, and you have to be able to use them per whatever arming order you're on. Here's some weapons limitations that we always go through. You got to be currently trained, again, on whatever the weapon system is you have, whether it's your pistol, 9mm, M16, less than lethal weapon. You have to be certified on it by the military in order to have it. It has to be issued to you by your unit. As always, we have to have proper storage of it. We don't store it in our POVs or our homes. We've got, when we're not using it, you're going to have a unit armory that you're going to store it in. We don't usually deploy automatic weapons unless the tag, in conjunction with the governor, has authorized it. Again, we only chamber rounds on order from your commander or senior NCO. I mean, you're not going to get any armor-piercing rounds, and blank ammunition isn't going to be issued to you either. So every now and then we get into a situation where whatever the operation is we're doing, maybe the locals aren't so wild about us being there, and we have had some issues like that. For the most part, it's been individuals maybe weren't too happy about, like, let's say, some of the things we were doing out in Lahaina during the wildfire response, or even up at the larger scale things like the TNT protest. That would be considered a civil disturbance operation. If we got involved, there would be certain rules that we would have to follow if we were going to usually assist the police in whatever it is that's going on. What we always try to tell people is no matter what, try to be professional, because these situations inherently are not necessarily chaotic, but they're aggravated type situations where people aren't happy, and you're supposed to be the honest broker and making sure that they don't get too out of line. And when they do get out of line, we potentially maybe have to take them into custody and hand them over to police. You get to that point, and it can be challenging because you're dealing with people that aren't really thinking logically at that point. They're thinking with emotion. But it's incumbent upon you as a person that's been assigned to try to control that situation. It's incumbent upon you to maintain your professionalism. We always say try to maintain your aloha spirit when you're dealing with these individuals. Always remember the primary people that are there for law enforcement are the police. With a lot of these operations we've done, we work in conjunction with the police, but they are the primary people responsible for law enforcement. We're there to help them. We can certainly detain people or help subdue people that are getting out of line, but at the end of the day, police are the lead agents when it comes to law enforcement, and we're there to assist. Anytime you ever have to deal with an individual that's getting out of line, you have, again, the right to self-defense, the right to eventually, if you have to, subdue that person and even detain them. But again, it's like all things, is the longer you have them in your custody, the worse it gets. So if you have to get to that situation, police should be around. I mean, we're normally not out in some area without the police somewhere nearby. But if you do have to take somebody into temporary custody, make sure you turn them over to the police as fast as possible. So with any kind of things like that, we don't discuss operations with others that might violate some sort of operational security. There's just some general considerations when you're dealing with civil disturbance type operations. You avoid damage to property unless reasonably necessary to perform your assignment. As always, adhere to your arming orders. As long as you're following the rules that your chain of command has put down, you're going to be okay. Try to be as courteous and show aloha as much as possible, even if the person that you're dealing with isn't happy and they're being belligerent to you. And then generally speaking, a lot of times you're going to see, and we did run into this over on Maui, try not to discuss what's going on with media members in the absence of a public affairs officer. And one of the situations I remember down in Lahaina, there was a guy that was going around and he was pretending to be media, and he was just this kind of amateur wannabe political type guy. I don't know what his deal was. He had an agenda, and basically he was driving around and going up to our checkpoints and speaking to our soldiers and eliciting some things out of them that was maybe somewhat derogatory about the chain of command, stuff like that. And the thing was, the guy was actually videotaping them while he was talking to them. And then he would post it on social media. And some of the comments were, I think one of our security guards was from Oahu, and he was making some disparaging comments about the local Maui police and whatever it was they were doing with the civilian population there. And it ended up looking somewhat bad for the Hawaii Guard. So just be careful when people are coming around and talking. Any more with the way technology is, you never know. There's a good chance that they could be, I think this guy was videotaping and it was a pen or something. It was some kind of camera that the person, our soldier was talking to, didn't realize he was being videotaped. But anyway, be careful when you're talking to people, because you never know who you're talking to. Generally speaking, if the media is going to be out, and certainly in an operation like that out in Lahaina, where people weren't really allowed to go in there. That's what we were there to do. We had checkpoints not allowing people to go into ground zero for any number of reasons, environmental reasons, blah, blah, blah. So generally speaking, if the media is officially going to be coming around talking to you in a situation like that, we're probably going to have a public affairs representative there, and they will be cleared. So always just be cognizant of who you're talking to and what you're talking about, because you never know who you're dealing with. I already touched on this, but again, we can take individuals into temporary custody if they're breaking the law. But the main thing I always say about that is police are the lead agency. Get them to the police as soon as possible. don't try to interrogate them. Don't try to read them their Miranda rights. Just get them over to the police as soon as possible and let them take care of it. If there's any sort of contraband or any sort of evidence, let's say the guy had a weapon, whatever, there's all sorts of scenarios that can come up. You can confiscate that, but again, keep it and then turn it over to the police as soon as possible and let them do their job. If you have reasonable belief that a person you're taking into temporary custody may have a weapon, you have every right and authority and probably responsibility to pat them down and make sure that they don't have a weapon, or if they do, you take it from them. And I always tell people that if you're going to do that, if you're going to, if you reasonably believe a person has a weapon, let's say you see a bulge along his belt line or whatever, you can pat them down. But if you're actually going to do a search like that, make sure you ask them beforehand if you're going to be reaching into somebody's pocket, if they've got anything in there that you should know about, i.e. hypodermic needles, things like that. And as weird as that may sound, stranger things have happened. You don't want to reach into somebody's pocket or into some bag or something and get stuck by an infected needle or anything else that they may have. So just keep in mind, if you're going to search somebody for weapons, it has to be a reasonable search, tailored to whatever it is you see. Again, I refer to like the bulge where you think, hey, maybe the guy's got a handgun or a knife there. The search has to be reasonable to that. You can't take him back and perform a full body cavity search on him. I mean, it's got to be tailored to the actual thing that you see. And again, anything you take from that individual, secure it and turn it over to police as soon as possible. I'm going to do a quick check on learning here, and I didn't necessarily hit on these as hard as I normally would, but I didn't really highlight this, but who's authorized to make changes to this RUF? Well, it's not you as an individual, it's actually the TAG or the TAG acting through the governor. So these rules are in place, follow them and don't go outside them. And any changes to the RUF, i.e. things like, okay, increased arming order, the threat's getting worse and worse and worse, you don't get them change these things on your own as an individual soldier. You have to wait for that to come down from the TAG, but that's how that works. What's the definition of deadly force? I didn't necessarily go into this in great detail, but deadly force is physical force that causes immediate death or serious bodily injury. And that could be from a lot of different things. Deadly force could be, a lot of people, we think in terms of, okay, a weapon, a gun, a knife, whatever. But deadly force can be anything, like some things we used to run into in Iraq all those years ago. People throwing rocks at our patrols coming by, and we had some soldiers got hit in the head and damn near died over that. I'd submit to you that that's deadly force. So, keep that in mind. If somebody's coming after you with, it doesn't have to be a gun or a knife. What is a baseball bat? I'd suggest to you that if that person is a couple feet away from you and they got that thing over their head about ready to hit you in the head, that's deadly force. So, physical force that causes immediate death or the threat of serious bodily injury. And I did hit on this quite a bit. What agency is primarily responsible to deter acts of violence, crimes, and enforce any legally ordered quarantine and or isolation? That would be the law enforcement agency. So again, whether we go to Hawaii, the Big Island, Maui, Kauai, whatever, we'll be working in conjunction with the police. You will have a set of parameters as far as the rules you're supposed to be, your mission, whatever it is you're doing. The one thing I would caution, particularly down at the individual level, is that I've worked with the Maui Police Department for years as a prosecutor over there, and those guys will, if they can, sometimes they'll try to dump some of their work off on you. But you as an individual National Guardsman, you're not there to do their job necessarily. You're there to enhance them and work together with them. You don't take orders from them. Your orders are going to come from Guard members. You work with the police, but they are the lead when it comes to actual law enforcement and making arrests and things like that. Okay, that's it for the rough brief. Now I'm going to go real quick into some things that almost invariably come up when it comes to whether it's state active duty, any kind of deployments. These are some of the legal considerations that invariably come up and you're going to want to keep in mind. The first two are the USERRA and SCRA. These are laws basically designed to help you as an individual who's being called up to serve his state or his country. USERRA is the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act. Now basically that law deals with your ability to keep your job, your civilian job, and go back to it basically without ever having left it, if that makes sense. Your service to your state, your service to your country should not negatively affect your full-time job. And that's basically what that law is all about. I don't necessarily have to go to the details of it, but just know that you have rights. And I will tell you individually, personally, I ran into some issues years ago when we went to Kuwait. I came back a year later and I was working for a small firm over on Maui, and my boss decided she wanted to redo my benefits and my salary package. And usually if that's happening, you're probably not making more money. They're probably trying to cut your pay, which is what she was going to do. And I had to let her know that, hey, you really can't do that. I've just got back from my deployment. I'm supposed to be brought back basically where I was when I left. And she didn't realize that. She wasn't, and once she found out that, hey, that's the law, she didn't try to do that. But I will tell you that there's just been any number of circumstances where our soldiers have deployed, come back, and they've changed their job. They've moved somebody else into their position, and they're trying to put them someplace else. Bottom line is that shouldn't happen. Your service to your state and your country shouldn't negatively affect your job. And if you run into issues, always just say, contact JAG, and either we're going to be able to help you, maybe gin up a letter to your employer. Most of the time the employers don't realize what the law is. They're not trying to break the law, and when they find out, hey, they are necessarily doing something they shouldn't be doing, they usually won't continue to do what they're doing. Sometimes you got some hard heads out there, and if they don't respond, then there's actually a national office up in Washington, D.C. that we can refer you to, and they generally can make people adhere to the law. The next is the SCRA, that's the Service Members Civil Relief Act. This one's designed to basically give you all certain benefits and certain protections during your deployment. This is individual type stuff. It doesn't really have anything to do with your job, but some of the highlights of it, you're entitled to a reduced interest rate for pre-existing debt. So, and again, personal experience for me years and years ago when I was enlisted with the 1st Cav out of Fort Hood. I deployed to Bosnia. I was an E4 at the time, and I had a bunch of credit card debt because I was a knucklehead, and I won't even tell you what I was paying in interest. But as soon as I deployed, at that point in time, I was entitled to have my interest rate capped at I think it was 6% at the time. It might even be lower now, and that was way lower than what I was paying. So all that pre-existing debt I had on my credit card, they capped my interest rate at 6%, and it saved me a lot of money. But that's one of the benefits. So keep in mind, okay, I've got some sort of debt, I'm going on orders, and if your interest rate is above 6%, it's a simple memo to the credit card company saying, hey, you got to cap the interest rate now, and they will. That's the law. They're all very familiar with that law. So that's one of them. You got certain protections against being evicted out of your house, or evicted out of your apartment, and foreclosure on your homes. You have the ability to terminate certain leases without penalty, vehicle leases, things like that. Like all things, the devil's always in the details. If you have some sort of situation like that where your deployment is causing you some sort of particularly financial type issue, get a hold of a JAG. We can kind of take your situation, plug it into the SCRA, and see if there's something out there that can be done. And a lot of times there is. So always keep that in mind. I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. But if you run into some sort of financial issue because of your deployment, get a hold of a JAG, and you'll have JAGs like for COVID, like the wildfire response. You'll have a JAG called up and over on whatever island we're on. Get a hold of them, and they're all pretty much my JAGs. I've worked with them for years, and they're great, and they'll go out of their way to help you out. So always keep that one in mind. Oh, got to go back one. And then the next one, real quick on this one, is our good friend General Order Number 1. You guys are all probably familiar with this. More than likely, if you're going on an operation like this, be it COVID, wildfire response, lava, whatever, state active duty, 502F, you're probably going to be under General Order Number 1. And usually what that means is you're prohibited from possessing or consuming alcoholic beverages. They usually extend it to you can't have any kind of pornography, and you're not allowed to gamble. There may be some other nuances to it, but that's the biggies. Usually the big thing is, hey, you can't drink. And just know that the General Order Number 1 is punitive, meaning, hey, if you get caught, you're in your hotel room. A lot of times we put people up in hotel rooms, and you get caught drinking, they can take action against you. You can get anything from administrative action, letter of reprimand, they could take HCMJ action against you, reduce you in rank. Bottom line, what's probably going to happen initially is, and this is historically what the commanders have done, If you get caught drinking, you violate General Order Number 1, they're going to curtail your orders. Whether you're on those great 502F orders we had during COVID, state active duty, they're going to curtail your orders. You're going to be taken off active duty, and you're going to be sent back to your civilian job. And a lot of times people don't like that because, particularly those 502F orders are a good deal. I mean, you're making decent money. A lot of times our soldiers are making better money on orders than they are in their civilian job, and they want to keep working. So you don't have any real due process rights when it comes to those orders. You don't have a right to be on ADOS orders. So if you get caught drinking, just know they're probably just immediately going to take you off orders and you're going to go back to being a civilian. And if you don't want to do that, if you like being on orders and accruing those retirement points and making that good money, then follow General Order Number 1, or don't follow it and get caught, and that's almost invariably what's going to happen is you're going to be taken off orders. You're probably going to get a letter of reprimand, and then whatever else they decide to do with you from there. But the one thing I would say is just know the specifics of the General Order Number 1 you're under, and follow the rules, and you won't be in any trouble. And then finally, last slide. And this one we just added in the last couple of deployments. If you have your phone, I'm going to leave this up here, but I would take a picture of this slide because it's a little bit detailed, but it just was amazing over the course of time, how many accidents our people tend to get into driving GSA vehicles. And I don't know what it is. I don't know. There just seem to be accident magnets. Maybe our guys are out there driving around with civilians and getting in accidents all the time, but it just seems to be a reoccurring issue that, our guys either back into something and hit it or somebody hits them. These are kind of the steps you need to take if you get into an accident driving a GSA vehicle. And I won't go into the specifics. Just take a picture of this, or if you do, just know, hey, call your command immediately, make a police report, take pictures of whatever damage was done. Because there are certain things that we have to do as a command to address the damage, who's going to pay for it, that sort of thing. So just know that there are certain rules out there when it comes to if you're driving that GSA. And then the other thing I'll say, as individual soldiers who are issued GSA vehicles, if you get into an accident, let's say you're doing, a lot of times our guys would make regular laundry runs, meal runs, whatever, to get food for their fellow soldiers, wherever we were contracted to get the food. Let's say you're driving to go get that food and you run into somebody or somebody runs into you. The law pretty much has you covered. You're operating within the scope of your job. You're doing what your command lawfully told you to go do. Hey bro, go pick up the laundry thing and bring it back. You get into an accident there, even if the accident is your fault, you're going to be covered. The Federal Tort Claims Act is going to cover you. They'll represent you if somebody wants to sue you, whatever. It's in the scope of your job, so you're going to be good to go. Where you're going to run into trouble is if you're acting what we call in the law outside the scope of your job, meaning you take that GSA vehicle with your buddies, and you may laugh, but stranger things have happened. With your buddies, you just say, hey, this is a great idea. Let's go down to, the strip joint and have a bunch of beers and then drive back to the unit tonight. And you get into God forbid, a drunken accident on the way home, run into somebody, God forbid you hurt them or kill them. The government's not going to cover you on that. That's outside the scope of your employment. They didn't pay you to take that GSA van, go down to Hot Ash, have a bunch of beers, and then go get in an accident. So just keep that in mind, that as long as you're driving that vehicle and doing it per your job, you're good to go. But if you go out on a frolic and decide, hey, it's a great idea to go do something stupid, and you get in an accident, well, the law's not going to protect you, and then you're going to be hurt. So always keep that in mind, and I put that out there because, believe me, stranger things have happened. So that's pretty much it for this legal briefing. I appreciate your time, and go forth, do good things, stay safe, follow the rules, and come back, make yourselves and the Hawaii Guard proud. Thanks.
Aloha, my name is Jeff Hickman, and I'm the Director of Public Affairs for the State of Hawaii Department of Defense. Today I'll be providing you a Public Affairs JRSOI brief that will assist you during this mission. First of all, mahalo for being a part of the Hawaii National Guard support. We are a community-based organization, and when we have the opportunity to give back to this community, it's special. Thank you. You are joining an element that will either fall under the command and control of the Hawaii National Guard Joint Staff or a joint task organization. There could be a public affairs officer in your immediate chain of command. It is this person that will be the SME for all things public affairs. There also may be an operations order with a public affairs annex, which may include some public affairs guidance or PAG that you may follow and use as your initial reference. Please ask your chain of command for that information. If that annex is not published, you may use the public affairs recommendations and best practices from this brief. You should be aware of what the chain of command is for your task force or team. Learning your chain of command is important, but also understanding the highest level of your organization will go a long way. In the PA Annex, you will hear the phrase active or passive media stance. You will need to understand the difference before you head to the field on mission. The stance is determined by the highest public affairs element in your organization. The active stance means you can engage with the media without informing the PAO first in your chain of command. Feel free to engage with the media as long as it doesn't interfere with your mission. Then notify your chain of command and your PAO after the engagement and include some details that can assist them. You can ask the media some questions when your interview is complete, like what media outlet they're from, when the story will run, and some contact information. You should also let the PAO know if you made any errors or said something that you should not have said. If the media stance is passive, then all media engagements must be coordinated through your public affairs officer. If media does come up to you or your team, gently remind them and refer them to your PAO. As a leader, you should have your PAO's contact information on you while you're on duty. Maintain operational security at all times. No mentioning of exact shift numbers or times or any future plans that may not have been implemented. If it is not in your lane, do not talk about it. One option is to politely answer, I don't have that information, but I can put you in touch with my PAO. Your public affairs annex will have talking points, prompts, and other things you can use with your media engagements. You don't have to memorize these, but just become familiar with them. Next, I'll go over some best practices that you can also follow. Understand the differences between passive and active media stances. We kind of went over that in the last slide, but it's very important to know. And whether it's active or a passive stance, the media and the public can still shoot videos or take pictures of you while your mission is being conducted, while out in the public view. But if they're interfering with you in any way or with the mission, call your PAO. Lessons learned. Treat everyone as a member of the media. In 2023, during the Maui Wildfire Support Mission, a Hawaii Guardsman was approached by a member of the public in a car and was asked simple questions about what was going on. The man asking the questions kept it conversational and then asked about relationships with local law enforcement and the Guardsman's personal opinion on the fire and the current mission. While it seemed innocuous and innocent to the Guardsman, it was actually a member of the media organization who specializes in undercover interviews. This type of journalism is known as gotcha media, and the entire interview and all responses were released on their website. The story was not a positive one, and it painted the Hawaii National Guard with a negative perception. The lesson we learned and that we now teach is treat everyone as media and assume that you're being recorded at all times. Anyone can record and publish pictures and videos on the internet. This includes times when you and your unit, section, or detail are in the public eye. Some of the things to be wary of and instances are taking breaks, smoking on site, looking at your phones while on duty, swearing in public, maintaining a professional appearance, your uniforms, proper PPE, etc. I recommend also not airing any negative personal opinions about the mission or partner organizations to the media or members of the public. If you are having a negative experience or challenges, share those with your appropriate chain of command. Give our organization the opportunity to better your situation. You can discuss who we are working with. You can discuss your organization's mission. You can talk all about yourself, things you're willing to share, why you joined, your unit, your rank, your name. Understand release authority and what you can say or not say with the media or members of the public. This information can be found in the Public Affairs Annex. If you have a question about whether something can be released or not, don't say it. Be respectful, mindful, and culturally sensitive to the mission. Native Hawaiians and cultural practitioners live amongst us, and there may be interactions with them while on the mission. I have more slides about that topic. This slide was designed for those guardsmen who are out of state who are assisting us with our mission. This list are some of the intricacies and the small things that you need to learn about Hawaii that'll help you have a successful mission. Aloha means hello, goodbye, and I love you. Yes, all of those things. Mahalo means thank you, and opala means trash. You may see mahalo on a lot of trash cans, maybe in McDonald's, but it just means thank you. We don't live in shacks or wear coconuts as undergarments. Don't say island fever or ask if Hawaii is really a part of the United States. We do drive slow here. We also do not use the left lane for faster traffic. We drive even slower in rain. A big one is don't forget to wave thank you if somebody lets you in. Wave your hand. It goes a long way. I know, our street names are sometimes difficult. Don't be frustrated or disrespectful to the names. They will get you to where you need to go. We eat rice with everything. We also love Spam. Don't hate us for that. Take off your shoes or slippers when going inside a house or home. And if you're going over to a friend's house for an event, bring something, dessert, snack, poo-poo. Anyone can be an uncle or auntie if they're older than you. If not, they're a cousin. If you meet one, they hug a lot. Uncle, auntie, cousin, and then the hug. Don't forget that. What high school you went to goes a long way here. It can get you out of trouble or into a special event. Learn the names of the people you meet and remember them. In Hawaii, there are many cultures and people. Respect them all. This slide has more detailed recommendations to help military visitors to avoid common pitfalls and stereotypes. Have humility, an openness to learn, and share when asked. These are all strongly valued and build trust. Don't come into any situation with community members as the all-knowing. This is a big one. Do twice as much listening as talking. Show respect by trying, staying open to learn, practicing cultural humility, a beginner's mindset, checking back to see if you got it, all of that. Be humble. Don't assume because Hawaii is a small state that all communities and islands are the same. This includes utilizing the same approach on every island in every community. Even towns just 5 minutes from each other by car can have a very distinct difference in resources, challenges, needs, perspectives, etc. Ask for specific input from folks who are from each community across Hawaii. Ask what would be most relevant to them. Not everything that works on the mainland will work here. Make sure your best practices and your resources include a local or Hawaii Pacific-based practice. There may be a local soldier or airman in your unit that can help. Refrain from calling Hawaii a paradise. The tourist industry and the military are the biggest money makers for the state and also big touch points for some of the native Hawaiians here. Cultural appreciation and cultural education are an afterthought. And practice challenging any bias you may have about Hawaii from mainstream media. Spend time learning about our history, cultures, strengths, and sets of challenges that we face, like anywhere else, and acknowledge the complexity. For statewide efforts, consider prioritizing and sharing information with the more rural communities first over urban areas as a way of balancing out a more equitable transparency in communication. Hawaiian time. When working with the communities, have the best intentions of starting on time, but be flexible and empathetic if things start late. And be aware of and manage your emotions if you are feeling frustrated because things are behind scheduled time. If you have deployed to Southeast Asia and have been involved with KLEs with tribal leaders, you know. Embrace the discomfort and unfamiliarity. Hawaiian names, locations, practices, pidgin English, what we do inside our homes. Know that you will make mistakes and be open to being corrected. And finally, understand the complicated history and recent events. Understand the complicated history and recent events of Hawaii, from the Red Hill incident, military bases in general, and the upcoming 2029 land lease issue. The military, including the Hawaii National Guard, may not be a favorite of the community. Understand and be empathetic to the current news and the history. Disease decimated the Hawaiian population. The abolition of traditional government, banning of the native language and dance, land ownership, and landscapes degraded for Western crops. And then currently, sovereignty fights. Know the history, be patient, be empathetic, learn what's gone on, and then move forward. Here are a couple other public affairs guidelines that we would like you to follow, some do's and don'ts. Do talk to and engage with the public and the community that we are supporting. Do remember to stay in your lane. Do discuss what you do full-time and as a member of the National Guard, your MOS, your AFSC, your mission, how long you've been in. Talk story. Do talk about where you live and how the incident or weather affects you or your family. Do be polite, but firm in dealing with the media or the public. Maintain a professional attitude. If the media or member of the public seems aggressive or inappropriate, end the engagement immediately and refer the interaction to your public affairs officer. Here are some don'ts. Don't speculate or speak about things you don't have the release authority for. Don't answer questions about your personal opinion. Do not discuss political issues. Do not lie. And do not confiscate materials or equipment from the public or the media. All right, in review. Check your Public Affairs Annex for Public Affairs Guidance or PAG. Definitely know who your PAO is. Be respectful, mindful, and culturally sensitive to the mission. Ensure you receive the latest information about the mission, about what kind of organization you belong to and what the task force is made up of. Remember that you may be recorded at all times. Remember to adhere to all safety protocols, SOPs, and use proper PPE. And finally, learn the do's and don'ts. Thank you so much for allowing me the honor of explaining to you some public affairs guidance for your JRSOI brief. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions or questions about your mission, please see your first line public affairs officer, or you can contact my office through your chain of command. I'm Jeff Hickman. Mahalo.